Hello everybody, how's it going? I'm the Meister and welcome back to Aubrey City. Today guys is a very special episode and I'm super excited to present it to you. Today we are going to be building a very important highway link in Aubrey City. It will link east to west on both of these major highways here. So as you can see right now on the screen, we have the main highway going straight through the heart of Aubrey City on the left, which is Highway 45, and on the right, which is Highway 880 leading into downtown. The 880 later connects to the 80 highway. So in between, I decided to choose Highway 440. I guess it's a derivative from Highway 45. In a lot of different cities, you'll have these sort of branches off main highways, and they'll name them a 3-digit number instead of a 2-digit number on that specific route. So it's just like a little arm off of that highway giving access to a specific part of a city. So in this case, it's the 440, and as you can see here, there's going to be a large interchange, and this took me quite a while to do actually. I built this little graph here on what exactly it's going to look like. So yeah, that's basically what's going to happen in this episode. But before we jump into all of that, I have to give you guys the results of last episode's poll. So here it is on the screen right now, and as you can see, out of 261 of you, 50% or 131 people chose the sunken highway, and a good 28% or 75 people chose the partially elevated and sunken. So in the last episode, I mentioned that I would rather have the elevated highway just because it would look a little bit cooler. But guys, I'm so glad that you chose the sunken system because at the end of it, I'm so satisfied with the way it came out, and I have so many ideas on how the surrounding area is going to look like. And you know, I knew you guys wouldn't let me down. You guys made the right choice, and you know, from the beginning, it was the idea that made the most sense, both geographically and, well, economically, I guess. So, anyways, without further ado, we're going to jump right into the video, and we're going to get started on this super huge mega highway project that took me, I'd say, a good 6 hours to complete. The interchange alone took me like a whole day of filming. So it was a pretty fun project. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. Oh, and I almost forgot, I wanted to present to you guys what I did after the last episode. And I filled in this empty space near downtown. I didn't really think it would be worth filming this section. There's nothing too special about it, except maybe this government building you can see in the middle here. But other than that, not too much special about it. It's just medium and low-rise housing, some commercial here and there. So anyways, without further ado, let's jump right into the highway project. Okay, so basically what I did here is I put these two little roads on each side of the highway just as reference points, and to give me an idea where the road is going to pass. It made it a little bit easier to terraform this area, and it didn't really serve much purpose other than that. I ended up tearing it down in just a minute here. So basically what I wanted to do is to create a sunken highway, sort of what you'd find in the suburbs of Detroit or a lot of other American cities, and I'm just going to take Minneapolis for an example. So there's not going to be any cement walls or anything like that. There's going to be grass strips on either side of the road, and there's going to be a collector lane, if you will, on each side of the highway, just to help direct traffic in and out of the motorway in the middle. So along the 440, there's going to be 4 separate interchanges connecting these large avenues to the highway, and in order to make these overpasses a little bit smoother, generally you want the height of the bridge to be about 12 to 15 meters high. I think it's a little bit too much of a steep incline for this sort of situation, so what I did is I lowered the actual highway about, I'd say, 6 to 8 meters, and I raised the overpass about the same amount, and it creates a much smoother transition, and it makes it a lot easier to create off ramps and on ramps. to that bridge. So that's something that I keep in mind when designing either raised or lowered highways. You sort of equalize everything, and it makes everything just a lot smoother. And what was a little challenging in this case too, as you can see here, I had to create a few steps because this area is on an incline. If I just kept the highway level, by the time we reached the east end of the 440, we'd be like 20 meters underground, and that would look pretty ugly. So I had to create these sort of steps to gradually follow the incline all the way through to keep it at a steady maybe 10 meters deep into the ground. Alright, so as you can see here on each side of the highway, there are two collector lanes, if you will, and those serve as, well, I mean, collector lanes, and they will be lined with buildings on each outside perimeter. So, you know, there will be traffic coming in and out of businesses. Their main purpose is to serve as entry and exit points for the highway in the middle here. One of the most challenging aspects of creating this project was deciding how to organize the entry and exit points of the highway, because we're dealing with such a confined space here that I really had to make do with what I had. As you can see here, I have to deal with a lot of different lane configurations and playing around with the Move It tool quite a bit here just to get everything to look very smooth, nice and neat, while retaining a very efficient configuration. So this off-ramp here, I decided to make it 2 lanes wide. One, because of the 4 lanes in this direction that we have to play with, because of the interchange that's very near to it. And 2, because this is probably going to be one of the busiest intersections on this road, due to the overpass being one of Aubrey City's main roads. So I assume that it's going to be pretty busy in this location, and I think it would benefit from having a couple extra lanes of traffic. And it also causes us to lose a lane after the exit, because I don't think it's going to be too busy in this location. I assume that most of the traffic going along this highway is going to be industrial traffic coming into and going out of the industrial port. So I think it should be fairly manageable with 3 lanes in one direction, or in each direction, and you know, with 1 extra lane just for exits and entrances. Another very challenging aspect was dealing with the different elevation differences, and just trying to get everything to look nice and smooth and realistic too, because you won't see any off-ramps being at a very sharp angle, just like in vanilla City Skylines. That was just terrible. So again, I have to use the Move It tool quite a bit here just to get all the glitchiness out and create these nice smooth slopes. And it's fairly easy to do with the Move It tool. It's one of the most important tools in the game, especially when dealing with roads, and it's really a lifesaver. Alright, so just a little tip here, guys. The easiest way that I found to create smooth off and on ramps is basically you take your road and you lay it down as you would in vanilla City Skylines, so it has a very steep and unrealistic approach to the highway. But after that, you take your Move It tool and move it to the angle that you want it. Usually I just set it to the steepest that it'll go without causing any graphical issues. And there are some limits with the Move It tool to how steep you can have your exit, but I think it's far enough to where it looks pretty good. And as you can see here, within seconds I was able to create a nice smooth off-ramp with little effort. So I think the Move It tool is far good enough for pretty much any road related projects. Alright, so what I'm going to do now, guys, is there needs to be an interchange connecting to this avenue you see here right now, and due to the space constraints that we have, I thought that the best interchange for this location would be a partial cloverleaf. So on this side of the interchange is where the loop is going to be, and on the other side it's just going to be a plain old diamond interchange. So it's going to be a mixture of both a partial cloverleaf and a diamond. This is the best example that I could find on Google Maps. It's in the outskirts of Toronto on Highway 407, and it's actually pretty identical to what we're going to build in City Skylines, as you can see. But there will be a slight modification to this interchange in that there has to be an on-ramp coming from this collector lane or just north of your screen right now. And in order to do that, the easiest way that I could think possible was to create an overpass going right over our on-ramp, creating a second on-ramp. So it does make things a little bit more complicated and challenging to build, but nonetheless it looks awesome, and I'm pretty certain it should perform awesome as well. Another pretty big obstacle I had to overcome is the proximity of the 45 interchange. That's like, I don't know, half a kilometer from this interchange. So creating off and on ramps and giving traffic enough room to merge between lanes was a pretty big concern, because I don't want everything to bottleneck into one big chunk. So I had to give a little bit of leg room in order to do that, and that was quite challenging as well. I had to redesign this interchange, I'd say 5 or 6 times before I got it to fit just right. So yeah, it was probably actually the biggest challenge in this project. Alright guys, well things are shaping up pretty good so far, and I hope it gives you an idea just how time consuming these sort of large projects are. Just to give you guys, just to put everything into perspective, this whole project took me roughly 4 to 5 hours, I believe. And that's not counting all the planning time and trying different things. So I probably have a good 6 hours invested in this project. So that's over, I'd say, a good week that I had to, sit down and plan ahead, try different road layouts and different things. So it's quite a process that goes into these sort of projects. I almost treat City Skylines as a hobby in itself. It's not just sitting down and playing a game. It's really, I guess you could say, it's like an expression of your own creativity, and it's a work of art, really. I don't go too much into detailing compared to a lot of other YouTubers out there, but even in general, I think City Skylines is somewhat of an art, if you will. So anyways, back to what's going on now. So I'm gonna start to construct the large interchange connecting to the 880 highway, and the majority of this interchange is going to be elevated, starting with this section right here. So there's going to be a small half diamond interchange connecting to this major road, and the purpose of that really is just to lose a lane. I had 4 lanes to play with, and I didn't really think that was necessary for the interchange. So it was a good opportunity to connect this elevated section to the road below, and at the same time we lose a lane from the elevated section. And we're going to go ahead and construct the large interchange now. So for this interchange, we're going to go with a 4-stack interchange. The majority of it's going to be elevated, although there's going to be a small sunken portion of it for one of the off-ramps. And in terms of scale, it's not going to be as large as the previous interchange we built way back in like episode 3 or 2 or something like that. But it is still going to be the city's second largest interchange in terms of size. In terms of functionality, it's pretty much the same as any other 4, I guess, directional interchange. So the reason I went for an elevated interchange rather than a sunken interchange, well, I guess the complete interchange can't be sunken. You obviously have to have bridges, but the majority of it is elevated, and the reason I did that was due to the geography of the area. So because the riverbank is such low elevation, I couldn't really build any trenches, because then you'd be lower than the water level, and that wouldn't be very realistic. So because we have such a steep incline leading into the sunken section of the highway, I decided to take advantage of that and use that as sort of like a beginning point for a bridge. So that's why it's such a perfect area to create this sort of interchange. So this interchange, in terms of building difficulty, it wasn't as bad as the sunken section of the highway, due to the amount of room I had to build, plus it being elevated. I don't really have to worry about size constraints or any obstructions. I mean, you could just build right over it, even if there were buildings underneath. In a lot of older cities, you'll actually have interchanges above city blocks, so you'll have warehouses and all sorts of fun stuff under interchanges, and that makes for some pretty fun creative stuff too, because in this area it's sort of going to be a little bit more lower end. It's going to be a little rougher part of town, and this is a pretty good opportunity to do that. So you might find some homeless tents and all sorts of quirky things like that under these sorts of interchanges. So that's something that I'm going to be doing in the future. I might not do that on camera, just because it's detailing, and I'm trying to not completely move away from that, but I want to shift my focus a little bit more towards the functionality of the city. So I'll be focusing a little bit less on camera anyways, in terms of detailing. I'll tell you guys, as much as this interchange was fun to build and it wasn't too challenging, I'd say the biggest challenge of it was fitting everything together height-wise. See, I want the interchange to be somewhat compact due to it being so close to downtown. Usually in most cases when you're in such a densely populated area, you don't have all the room in the world to play with, so size is a constraint. And I want to emulate that as much as possible, so I wanted to make the interchange as compact but as functional as possible, while retaining a good amount of realism. So one of the challenges was elevation wise to fit everything together. So as you can see here, it is a 4-level stack interchange, and it might look like a big mess of bridges to you guys, but to me it is a pretty I guess sensitive and precise machine. So as you can see here, I mean, we have 3 bridges, one on top of the other, crisscrossing each other, and I wanted them to be as close to each other as possible because I didn't want the bridges to be like 30-40 meters high. I still want it to look somewhat aesthetically pleasing. So basically the way that I was working around this was I took a truck box prop. It's roughly the size of a vanilla truck in the game, and I place it on the bridge and I see how much clearance I have above that truck, and that's sort of how I gauge how high to have the bridge above it. So that's just a pretty simple tool that I use for that. It's really not complicated, but it's pretty useful. It's pretty useful because I find in the game, in default City Skylines, whenever you plop down a bridge, the first level that you can raise a bridge is 12 meters. Now that is pretty high, even for real life standards. In most cases, it's probably not more than 8 or 9 meters, I suppose. It's usually like, what, 12, 13 feet? I'm not really sure, but anyways, it's certainly not 12 meters, and in my opinion, it looks totally unrealistic. So I try to steer away from that and try to keep it to the minimum amount of height possible that you can pass a truck underneath of it. So I'm going to go a little bit off topic again here and state that a lot of times when I'm building any sort of project in City Skylines, I have a basic idea of what it's going to look like at the end in my head, but by the end none of my big projects ended up exactly how I expected they would look. I've always been really happy with them. The only thing is that they rarely end up even sometimes remotely what I was expecting that they would look like by the end, and this interchange is no exception. And the reason I'm saying that is because as I was progressing with this interchange and as it was taking shape, I sort of noticed that it looks much like a conventional Y interchange with some extra arms that are going all over the place. So as you can see right now, if we zoom out a little bit, you can sort of see that Y interchange, but then you have a whole bunch of off-ramps going straight through it. So I think that's a pretty interesting aspect of it. I really think it's an aesthetically pleasing interchange to look at, and I think it adds a ton of, not realism, but I guess it adds a nice touch to Aubrey City. So I guess my favorite thing about this interchange is just its pure uniqueness. I mean, I bet you guys haven't seen anything like this on YouTube. It's a custom interchange. It's not available in the workshop. You've never seen this exact interchange built ever, and that's something that I sort of take pride in. It created something that nobody has ever done before, and that's one of the things that I strive to do with this series, and try to keep you guys entertained as much as possible, and creating unique structures and unique anything in City Skylines. I think that's the best way to go about it. So this is actually a pretty interesting part of the interchange. I pretty much almost completed it, and I noticed almost all the way through that I'd forgotten one of the most important off-ramps in the interchange, and that is the west to southbound interchange on the 45/880 interchange. And the only way to do that, I didn't want to add an extra elevated portion of it, so I thought the only way to do was to add a little sunken section. So I had to create these two little overpasses here and sort of try to fit this on-ramp onto the interchange. And for this part, this was easily the most challenging part of the interchange. So another pretty huge challenge about this little off-ramp here. Here you can see it merges onto the 880, and that's fine, but the problem comes that not even a quarter mile down the road, there's an off-ramp leaving from the same lane that this on-ramp connects to, and that leads back onto eastbound 440. So the problem is that I wanted to leave drivers enough room to merge. Here you can see right here how little space that drivers have to merge onto the highway. So obviously you need some room to merge. So I had to sort of redesign this area to get everything to fit, and that was a little bit of a challenge. But in the end, everything is good, and I managed to figure something out. So after I finished this little off-ramp here, we're pretty much done for this episode, guys. This was actually a pretty huge undertaking for me, and I really hope you guys enjoyed watching me go through it. But it was a ton of fun. And this isn't the last interchange project we're going to do in Aubrey City. Just to give you guys a heads up, there's going to be a not so large interchange, but still pretty interesting interchange leading into Aubrey City's main airport, which we're eventually going to get into, as well as a few smaller interchanges here and there within the city. So stay tuned for that, guys. So before we take off, I'm just going to show you guys a nice cinematic of what we've built today, and I hope you guys enjoy that. But before we do that, guys, I would just like to briefly apologize for the delay in releasing this episode. There's been a few unexpected turn of events that have been happening in my life. Nothing major, so don't worry, guys, I'm okay. I moved once again. I'm not in the same location anymore, so that's why you may have noticed a change in the audio quality. So I haven't really gotten to tweaking that yet. I'm not really satisfied with the way it's sounding, but you know, I only noticed halfway through doing this episode, so the hell with it for now. So yeah, hopefully you guys will understand, and I'll be back to regularly uploading an episode every week and a half to 2 weeks. I'll try my best to keep up with those. Obviously you guys know I'm pretty busy in my life, but also, as you guys know, I always try to fit in a little extra time to bring you guys some more content, and don't worry, I'm not stopping to do so anytime soon. So with that being said, guys, this is all for today. In a second here, you'll witness the beautiful cinematics of what we've created today. And stay tuned for the next episode, guys, because it's going to be a pretty interesting one as well. Fortunately, there's no voting in this episode. I didn't really get a chance to organize a voting session for this episode. But stay tuned for the next episode, because there will be, and it will continue to do so in many episodes afterwards. So guys, please feel free to subscribe to my channel. I would much appreciate that, because there's much more content coming on the way. Also, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I would also appreciate that. And until the next episode, guys, please take care.